You ever realize how strange it is that human beings, the same creatures who flinch when toast pops out of the toaster, voluntarily sit in the dark and watch demons, killers, ghosts, and the absolute worst case scenarios our brains can invent? We pay money to feel unsafe. We buy popcorn for panic. We hit play next on stories we know will give us nightmares. And then afterwards, we're like, wow, that was awesome. Let's do it again. Today on Planting Thoughts, we're diving deep into the underbelly of why we love horror, not the cute Halloween is fun explanation. You know those people. But the real psychological machinery behind fear, arousal, darkness, and fantasies of danger, the bizarre attraction some people feel towards killers, the obsession with true crime, and all the things you would never say aloud, but your brain is absolutely doing behind the scenes. And yeah, some of this is going to get really uncomfortably dark. You know me. The kind of dark that makes you rethink your For You page. You know who I'm talking to. The kind of dark where the monster isn't supernatural, it's human. Let's talk about why people love fear and why some cross a line into something else entirely. We love crossing lines here at Planting Thoughts, don't we? The pleasure of fear, right? I mean, fear is supposed to keep us alive. It's an alarm system, but horror hijacks that alarm in a very clever way, right? One of the core scientific explanations is this thing called the excitation transfer theory, right? It's a verified psychological framework, so this isn't, some fly-by-night, pop psych BS. But what happens is during a horror movie, your heart rate spikes, adrenaline floods, right? Your muscles tense. Your body goes into this, fight or flight sort of mode. But then when the danger resolves, the killer is defeated, the scene ends, the credits roll. All that leftover arousal doesn't vanish. It transforms. Your brain reinterprets it as pleasure, right? Relief, thrill, euphoria. It's why people walk out of haunted houses, right? You know the types. They're laughing hysterically. They're giggling, right? They're totally high as hell, right? They're high on fake danger. And layered on top of that is, this thing we call benign masochism, which is a verified research concept, really, where humans enjoy things that should feel bad. Bitterness, spiciness, sadness, pain. As long as they know they're safe, they're good. Your brain loves flirting with danger, right? Danger that can't actually hurt you. We're not psychopaths. Well, most of us aren't. And beneath both of these is something even older, an evolutionary theory called threat simulation. The idea is this: our ancestors survived by preparing for danger. So, humans could naturally seek out practice scenarios, I guess, right, for threat. Now, what horror does is it gives us these low cost drills, right? It's a shadow behind you, a scream in the night, something crawling under the floorboards, right? Something's under your bed, little ones. Your brain loves this stuff, even if your conscious mind swears you don't. I mean, let's be honest, even Pixar made a movie about this garbage. What was it, Monsters, Inc.? I mean, the whole thing was about how little kids like to be terrified. You ate that stuff up. You know you did. You ate that stuff up. There's also this thing called the art of suspense, right? Suspense is one of the cruelest things the brain secretly enjoys. Neurocognitive research basically shows that suspense activates brain areas involved in prediction and social cognition. So this means basically that when you're watching someone hide in the dark, your brain isn't just scared, right? It's working. It's calculating. It's trying to guess the future. I mean, horror is a puzzle with blood on it, right? This is why sometimes the scariest parts of a movie is nothing happening at all. It's the silence, that deep, dark hallway that you're walking down, the shot where you're convinced something's about to move, but it doesn't. Your brain creates its own monster. When the suspense finally arrives and then it finally resolves itself, reward systems, right? They light up like a fireworks show in a cheap trash 4th of July. The emotional satisfaction of relief is a payoff. Fear is the setup. Pleasure is the punchline. Come on. Now, what is your brain actually doing during, this horror? If you could see your brain during a horror movie, it would look like a lightning storm. The amygdala, your fear detector, right? It activates immediately. The anterior cingulate cortex and the prefrontal cortex, they jump in to regulate emotion, right? They try to tell you, calm down. It's fiction. You're safe. Probably. But my favorite part of horror neuroscience is audience synchrony. Now, this is when a group watches something scary together, right? And their heart rates, their physiological signals, right? They are literally syncing up as if everyone becomes one creature experiencing the same threat. Now, humans bond through shared danger, even imaginary danger. And this is why teenagers love horror movies for date nights. Your nervous systems synchronize. You little nerds feel closer. Fear becomes intimacy. The monster is just a wingman. So, guys, horror movies. Now, why do some people love horror and some run away from it, right? I mean, what makes people different? Now, people vary widely in horror tolerance, right? There are the high sensation seekers, and these are the people that love speed, risk, adrenaline, right? These people eat horror like candy, baby. For them, fear is stimulation. And then you've got these high empathy viewers, right? Sometimes they enjoy emotional horror because it lets them feel deeply, right? And then they can release it. So they're using horror as a kind of catharsis. But people with high anxiety traits, yeah, they often avoid horror unless they control the context, right? Lights on, friends around, skip button ready. And that makes sense to an anxious mind, right? Horror doesn't feel safe enough to be benign. And culture shapes it too. What's scary in one culture might be funny in another, to be honest. And what's taboo in one era might be mainstream in the next. Fear is never universal, it's personal. Now, why is there a dark delight of watching people suffer, right? I mean, let's get into some uncomfortable sort of territory here, right? Because humans have a built in, very real capacity for dark delight. I'm talking about the eerie satisfaction some people feel when others fail, fall, right? Flat out suffer. A little sadistic. It's called schadenfreude, right? And it isn't just emotion, it's a neurological event. When researchers scan the brain during moments of schadenfreude, something wild happens. The reward circuitry lights up, specifically the ventral striatum, the exact same region triggered by things like winning money, eating sugar, addictive drugs, right? Or receiving praise, maybe even sex. We all love sex. In other words, the brain literally is rewarding you for someone else's misfortune. This response becomes stronger when the person suffering is someone we envy. That's the disturbing twist. Envy makes this feeling spike, right? The brain is wired to reduce the discomfort of feeling less than by enjoying a rival's downfall. I guess it helps you deal with a little bit of that imposter phenomenon we talked about a couple episodes ago. In a 2015 fMRI study on social rivalry, it found that people who experienced envy toward high status individuals showed dopamine linked activation when those same individuals lost status or made mistakes. I mean, the brain treats it almost like justice being served, right? Even when there's no justice involved. But here's where it gets even darker. There's this thing called the moral disengagement loop. When a person already dislikes someone or feels wronged by them, the brain begins to dial down empathy circuits, the anterior insula, responsible for feeling other people's pain, right? It actually becomes less active. That internal voice that normally says, hey, that's another human, be decent. Yeah, it goes quiet. It goes really quiet. And that's why online bullying feels so easy to some people, right? Reduced empathy plus reward activation equals a dangerous psychological cocktail. There's also this thing called the masked dominance high. Another dark mechanism behind enjoying others people's pain is tied to dominance psychology. I mean, humans are hierarchical species, right? When someone suffers, specifically someone we perceive as dominant or like high value, right? Or threatening to our status, the brain experiences what researchers call a relative rank boost. It's not happiness necessarily, it's relief. That's why when the best among us fall a little bit, everyone else is feeling good about themselves. You're welcome. There's a subconscious whisper, right? I'm safer now. You're not ahead of me anymore. Unverified detail, but consistent social dominance research. Now, this effect is actually even stronger in people with high narcissistic traits, right? Someone who shows blunted empathy responses and an exaggerated reward response when a rival fails. This isn't fantasy. I mean, this has been documented. Now, why does this dark delight content, right, go viral? The reason fail videos, exposés, call outs, messy public breakups, and watch this influencer fall apart content, right? Why do they spread so fast? Because it activates exactly these same systems. The viewer feels bonded to others in the comments, superior to the person suffering, rewarded by the dopamine hit, safe because it's happening to them, not us. And the creepiest part, this neurological cocktail, it makes people keep watching. It makes them keep scrolling for their next little dark, dirty fix. Now, there is a small subset of people where this dark delight turns basically into something compulsive, attaches to their shadow self, as Jung called it. The reward loop becomes too powerful, if you will. But based on emerging research, they show that extended exposure to online humiliation actually can condition the brain to seek schadenfreude the way it seeks regular pleasure, like a form of almost like emotional junk food, right? They crave things like the chaos, the downfall, the public humiliation, drama escalations, interpersonal destruction. I mean, the whole gamut of, destructive emotional garbage. They love watching someone's emotional collapse in real time, right? Not because they're evil necessarily, although they might be. It's because their brain has learned that pain, someone else's pain, predicts pleasure. And that's the part most people don't want to admit. But some people want the line crossed. There's a shadow side, right? And this is where we're talking about things like hybristophilia, serial killer fandom, macabre obsessions. You know, this is the darkest territory of this episode. the part human psychology and most people try not to think about. But here on Planting Thoughts, baby, I jump right into that stuff because that's what I do. Now, there's this thing called hybristophilia. Now, kids, this is a verified clinical concept, and it describes sexual or romantic attraction to people who have committed crimes, sometimes really violent ones. It kind of explains why people like, I don't know, like what's his name? Ted Bundy, right? He had a whole fan club. He had chicks trying to marry him in prison. I mean, this is where the fascination with prison groupies and love letters to killers and things like this goes way too far, right? It's not just internet rumor. This is documented stuff. I mean, there are the passive types, right? Fantasy at a distance, right? So they just kind of like, maybe they build a shrine to, I don't know, the Columbine killers or something, right? Like this. But then there's also the active types, and they want direct involvement. These are the ones, like trying to like have hookups in prison with these freaks. And, the motivations can include wanting to fix the offender, parasocial attachments, right? Rebellion a little bit. It's also taboo arousal. It's kind of sexy, right? Because the person's so off limits. You might even feel special by connecting with someone dangerous, right? And then there's this thing called serial killer fandom. And this has been documented in numerous media outlets and studies on sociology, etc. Right? But these are basically like communities that create artwork, fan fiction, edits, role play, romanticized portrayals of these notorious killers, criminals. They mythologize these offenders, right? The same way that fandoms sort of mythologize celebrities. They idolize them. They eroticize them. Some identify with them. Not all fans want harm, but some find comfort, excitement, or belonging in bonds centered around violence. And that's where it gets ethically troubling. Researchers warn about things like victim erasure, right? I mean, if we're so focused on the killer, who's having time to talk about the kids that were murdered? There's also the voyeuristic fascination with trauma making monsters into icons, online echo chambers that normalize dangerous admiration. And in the last few years, and I want you to interpret this with caution because it's preliminary, but they suggest that social media edits and like glamorized portrayals might actually increase this hybristophilic interest in certain viewers. Attractive actors, right? Stylized narratives, romanticized fan edits. These twist perception, right? And when danger is beautiful, the line between fear and desire bends. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been attracted to the wrong woman because she was a little dark and mysterious. It's kind of sexy. Now, why can't we look away? Why does all this exist? Why horror? Why killers? Why a fascination with darkness? Because horror is a playground for every emotion we're not supposed to feel openly. It's the shadow of the human side, right? It's the shadow of human psychology. The urges we repress, the what if scenarios we hide, the thrill of danger without danger, the curiosity about taboo behavior, the need to understand evil, to feel protected from it, right? Horror lets us explore darkness without being consumed by it. Well, most of us. Some walk toward the edge, some stare over it. Unfortunately, a few step across. Horror isn't just entertainment, my dudes. It's a mirror. It's a rehearsal. It's a pressure valve. It's a forbidden dance with fear. It shows us that we're not actually afraid of monsters. We're afraid of what those monsters unlock inside of us. We're afraid that we enjoy the thrill too much, that we want to look. That part of us leans towards the abyss, not away from it. So when you turn off this episode tonight, and when you walk down a dark hallway, And when you hear a noise from the other room, ask yourself, do you love horror because it scares you or because it reveals you? And if something in the shadows is watching back, maybe you're not the audience. Maybe you're the story. Thanks for listening to Planting Thoughts. You might want to sleep with the lights on tonight. See you later.